Olá, bem-vindos ao IMIP Educa Global. Nosso objetivo é explorar diferentes concepções de saúde global, seus determinantes, buscando e discutindo soluções e inovações para alguns dos principais problemas de saúde que o mundo enfrenta hoje, buscando sempre conexões entre o local e o global. O episódio de hoje vai ser um episódio especial. Nós temos aqui a presença da nossa convidada, que é Makeba Kedem-DuBose. Ela estudou design de interiores no Harrington College of Design de Chicago. Ela é certificada em práticas curatoriais de artes visuais na Escola Graham da Universidade de Chicago e é diretora, e foi na qualidade de diretora criativa da Aliança Global da Saúde Global de Chicago que ela veio ao IMIP e, portanto, nos dá o prazer de estar aqui hoje. Seus trabalhos como artista e exposições recentes muitas vezes giram em torno de temas como justiça social, abordando questões sobre racismo, sexismo, violência, saúde mental e o desaparecimento de mulheres negras e indígenas, com muita relação sempre com a saúde. O trabalho de Makeba é conhecido também por evocar fortes reações emocionais e convidar as discussões sobre as questões questões sociais importantes. A nossa conversa vai fluir em inglês, mas não se preocupem, porque a gente vai ter as legendas aqui para vocês. So good to have you here, Makeba, and thank you so much to be with us, for you to be with us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Good. Shall I ask production to put one slide, please? I hope you don't mind. I have a few surprises for you. The first, I hope. So to make our conversation going, this is a picture. I guess this is a tiny piece that you've produced, but it's there to remind me to ask you. I mean, I've been reading about your work, your journey, and your life, and one thing in particular called my attention. You mentioned that at some point in your childhood, you noticed that the stained glasses of the church you attended did not have black people.
Yes, or Asian people.
Or Asian people.
Indian people.
Would you like to comment on that? And how that, those experiences influenced your journey?
So, I was a very young child when I noticed this, and my mentor as an artist was a Jesuit priest at the parish that I belonged to, who I spoke with about many things, including this. So when I noticed this, I was always a pretty precocious child. I noticed everything, and I was infinitely curious about everything. So it just occurred to me, how can there be a God of all people that does not include people who look like me? And that became the basis of my artwork over the years, where I included images of people who were of dark complexion, people who looked differently than the approved of images of what God and any of the leaders of the church or during the biblical times should look like. It occurred to me that there should have been more brown people because in the area where Jesus was, it was very hot, and I don't think that many other types of people would have survived during that time in that sort of environment. I think that all people existed in all places at all times, and I was raised very Catholic, so I have this theory that it was when the Tower of Babel occurred that we became separated. In my way of thinking, we are all connected. I don't have any racist ideology. I believe that we're all connected, and originally we were one people. It was the change in location and language or the changes that occurred due to the changes in location that caused us to be more and more separated.
Now, I want to get that, to explore that word connection. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to share an example. And when I was a kid and then teenager, and I could have some English enough to understand lyrics from songs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I came across this song, and later became a pediatrician. That even touched me even more deeply. Mm-hmm. I came across this song, and first I should start with the Brazilian song called Meu Guri. It's by songwriter Chico Buarque, and it tells a tale of a child who is born poor, mm-hmm. and then suffers from hunger, and then steals to survive, and then eventually dies. So, in the Guri story, he promises her mom when he was a kid that he will one day get there, achieve. So, in the song, he gets to the pages of the newspaper, but when he's shot dead, and that's a very sad story. But there is a song that, when I had enough English to understand, sang by Elvis Presley on a runny nose, a child with a runny nose that suffers hunger, grows angry, steals, and eventually dies, mm-hmm. in the ghettos of Chicago. So mm-hmm. you are from Chicago, and right. I'm sort of putting that example as a connection, and how we are far more equal and far more similar in problems and in challenges than maybe we can think about. So how interconnected do you think we are?
I feel we are quite, but I will say that I think it's become normal to consider poverty synonymous with being Black or being ignorant being synonymous with being Black or poor. And I think that's an incorrect way of seeing things. Obviously, I am not ignorant and I am not poor. So there are lots of people who in Chicago who would not fit that stereotype. The differences that I see between here and there is that the struggle for equality happened for us going all the way back to the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, around in that time. And I was speaking to Dr. Lopez, I believe, Andrea Lopez. Yeah. And she was saying that this only began here maybe 5 years ago for Black people or people of African descent. That was astonishing to me that it's just starting, you know. And in my country, you know, Black people fought for equality for everyone, and yet many Black people are still not receiving their due from what they fought for. Other people receive it, people who immigrate to the United States, people who are not of African American descent, and even sometimes people who come from parts of Africa come to America and receive more benefits than the African Americans who have been there all along and have fought for those rights.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm bringing that, and mm-hmm. and I'm careful not to fall into stereotypes, as you say, but mm-hmm. the reason I'm saying that is because in health, and when you study mm-hmm. epidemiology and we study inequity, and we see that we have this very, very impactful studies that show, for instance, that Black women may not receive as much anesthesia as they should have. And just to give you an example, so in just to bring about the idea of inequity and the good journey, the good fight has been fought mm-hmm. For equality and for reducing inequities all globally, and that brings me to the question. And I understand that you deal with art and art is related to health, but because we always try in this series to connect the local and the global. But again, I can't think of anything more universal than art in a way.
Art is integral to all things.
It's integral to all things, isn't it? At the same time, it's unique, and even if at the individual level, you have different perceptions or responses to art. But I would like to ask you, how come did you get the art that you've been so prolific to create? How come it gets involved? You got involved with health and global health specifically.
Okay, I think my work as a curator, I curate exhibitions for art, and I have a long history of fundraising, which is how I was approached, or the reason why I was approached by Dr. Adam Murphy for Chicago Global Health Alliance. Our connection was a mutual friend. The principal of my youngest child's school, elementary school, was Adam's or Dr. Murphy's college friend. So she suggested, or she recommended me to Dr. Murphy, and he came to meet with me, and the rest is history. I have always felt that there was a connection between art and all things, and of course health is involved in that, because if you cannot idealize or how do I say, demonstrate with drawing what you're trying to do within the body, then it's hard to conceptualize what needs to be done. So I would say that is the connection. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, very much so. And I've been, I mean, with you very little time, but enough to see that you have a different view of things, a different eye for things. And you were in the lab, and you saw a set of pipettes, and the lab people just used that to separate samples, and then you imagine them as paintbrushes. And again, when you saw the simulator, then you produced a beautiful piece of art and abstract art on that. And I heard that you compare the movement that the surgeons were doing by exercising the simulator with the painter in the paintbrush.
Yeah.
Could
it
you
appeared to me that they were painting, but they were, I don't know what those tools were, but to me, visually, it felt like my own process of painting and creating with the paintbrush and other implements or tools used for art. So I found a really, a strong connection with that. And of course, I've been considered a colorist as an artist, because I use a lot of color. I excelled in color theory when I was in design school. I never went to school for visual art. I went to school for interior design, but I was mentored very early on as a visual artist by the Jesuit priest that I mentioned earlier, who I was taught advanced art theory in like 5th or 6th grade elementary school when I was maybe 10, 11 years old, and lithography, things that you don't learn until you're in college art. And so that informed the way I teach as well, because I have taught art to elementary and high school students, as well as some adults, but more as an independent study. Many art teachers would never dream of giving 2nd grade or 3rd grade students who are like 7 or 8 years old things like X-Acto knives. Do you know what the X-Acto knife is? Probably a similar tool in medicine that cuts, to make lino block prints. I gave my young students these tools, and I taught them how to use them. And they used them. Yes, they cut themselves a few times, but they learned from that, and they did a very good job from there on. I believe children are very malleable, and that they can learn anything. That is why with language, you want to teach a child from as early as possible, so that they can grasp the language and learn it to the best of their ability. Because once a person reaches, I think, past 15 years old, it's really difficult to learn a new language, just as it's difficult to learn many other things, such as art, or it's to do surgery. Well, no, that's not, that's a different, However, I would argue that perhaps we should give children surgical tools and teach them how to work with simulation devices, and perhaps we'll have some really fantastic doctors in the future.
One of my funny that you say that, because when my son, he's in medical school now, but when he was playing video games, and I complained to him, and he said he would say, I'm training to be to use surgical instruments.
We have this game called Operation. I don't know if you have it here.
I've heard about it.
Where it's a simulation, and you take the tools and you take out the spleen and and all of these things, and I think that that game caused or helped to take away a lot of anxiety for the generation of children who played that game. Yeah. Because it would buzz really loud, if you made a wrong move when doing the surgeries. So yeah, I think that the key to having exceptional doctors, I mean, we do have some now, of course, but I think that it could even be improved by starting even younger with the children.
And art is a component of these kind of education in a broader and more, perhaps to develop some sensitivity to social issues and personal issues. Maybe that's one great thing about art. And I wonder, because you've mentioned also your professional side, and you said that you've been involved in fundraising, and actually we take the opportunity to thank you again for your work and what you've done to bring donations to IMIP. And how does that work in your daily life, for instance?
Fundraising?
Yeah, fundraising, and this professional business side that is also important to actually to provide and to make people access art. In other words.
I worked with children a lot. I used to be a youth art program director for an organization called Chicago Global, Youth Service Program. And it was a youth social service organization that had an art component. So my method of teaching involves, and with art, particularly with children, is all facets of art, not just how to create art, but how to sell it, how to market it. And I was teaching these very young children, about these things. So the art program, myself with the children, developed how do I say, a holiday market where we would sell all of the things that the children created throughout the year. So like around December, near Christmas, we would do this holiday market, and the children would create the product, label the product, describe the product, sell the product, and used a portion of the money to help fund the program. So it was fundraising. I also taught them fundraising. I think that fundraising is also essential to everything, because if you don't have the money to run hospitals, programs, educational systems, then it's just a waste of time. So I think that it's important to include that even in medical training, to find ways. And my suggestion, which I mentioned to the president of the hospital, I forget her name now.
Sylvia Hissing?
Miss
Sylvia Hissing. Yeah.
Sylvia Hissing. That a way to fundraise for the hospital might be to have programs where artists teach patients how to create usable items to sell, to help fund, the health programs. I don't know if I'm going off, because I do tend to do that. I'm an elliptical storyteller where I start, going into other areas. So you can stop me if I'm...
Don't worry, we're both ellipticals.
Okay.
So we're fine, because the different people can play with that.
Okay.
But, well, thank you for sharing your views. And I want to explore a little bit more of the, art and health in terms of, space and, we've been all told stories about art pieces in hospitals, and there's a funny story about patients in a London hospital. They wouldn't like to leave hospital because they felt they were in a beautiful place full of pieces of art. But again, art in the hospital, how does it create connection, and how does it break the cold aspects and the cold atmosphere that a hospital can have?
So every color has a vibration and a meaning attached to it. For instance, even, I'm wearing blue today because I'm being interviewed. And when I studied color theory in design school, blue is a color that you wear for interviews because it makes people feel trusting towards you. Wow. The color pink can be very healing, it just makes people a little happier. The color yellow is like sunshine, so it makes people happier as well. So every color has a certain vibration to it. When I am painting, and with my black paint, because black paint is, how do they say, in color theory, there's tint and shade. Black is shade, white is tint. White is supposed to be the inclusion of all color, and black is supposed to be the absence of all color. Now, scientifically, that makes sense, but in color, when in action, when you mix all the colors together, you get black. Yeah. You don't get white. So there's that, and I think that a greater knowledge of what these colors represent is helpful when creating art for particular purposes. So for a hospital, you would not want to have, say, for instance, a lot of red, because red is a very emotional color. It kind of brings feelings of anger, and it can give you sort of an anxious feeling, anxiety. So that's a color that I would avoid in any sort of hospital design, because you want people to feel calm. You want people to feel peaceful, and you want a healing sort of environment. So green, because it is earthy and it is considered a more healing color. Well, I can get into some more spiritual things that may be outside of the range of science, such as, the archangels. And there's one particular archangel, Raphael, who is actually my angel, and his color is green, and he's the healing angel. So all of these things can be combined to create an environment that is conducive to healing.
Well, fantastic. And I want to explore a little bit more on the healing aspects of color in art. Mm-hmm. But I will ask again for another projection. Can you please put the next one? So, it's all there in the internet, so I could find different pieces that you've produced. And I think this sequence of 3 pieces, the triptych, mm-hmm. that, if I'm not wrong, represent trauma, and then transformation, and then resilience. And that was painted during the pandemic. So I would like you to comment on how pandemic, influenced in your work, in your perception of the world, and, again, connection and art mm-hmm. as a part of a healing process in the pandemic. And later on, I'll bring it back, showing a little bit of your productions in yellow and the sun, and the sun representation of joy and people to be happy. Mm. But this sequence, and I felt it so beautiful. Can we show the second one? This would be transformation, if I'm not wrong, and then the next one would be resilience. Mm-hmm. And then in the sequence we have you as an activist, or an artist doing your job in the street, and then finally this, which I guess was part of a project on 365 days of sun. So can you
artificial light,
365
days of sun. So
healing and art. How do you?
So, me, myself, I have, how do I say, I've been diagnosed with a depressive disorder and also with ADHD, which is attention deficit disorder. I technically have ADD. When I created these works, it was during the winter, and I was feeling a little down, and I said, because it's seasonal affective disorder is what I have, so lack of sun. And particularly people who, of African descent, like we have a deficiency of vitamin D, which comes from the sun, which is sort of the happy vitamin. And when that goes away during the winter, because we have very long winters in Chicago, many African Americans experience depression. I started doing these drawings with Sharpie markers. I don't know if you know Sharpie markers. They were like waterproof markers on little pieces of paper, maybe 2-inch by 2-inch papers, and I just started making these little sun images. So I say, if I cannot have the sun in the sky, I will make my own sun. So that's where the title came from. Artificial light, 365 days of sun. So I create my own sun every day of the year. It became something that I just never stopped doing. And then I started teaching it in schools and universities to like summer programs for young camp students. And the first workshop that I did at the University, it's not University of Chicago, I can't think of it right now, Chicago State University in Chicago. The children were just so excited about it, and they said, I have this problem. And these were not just African American children, these were children who were of Hispanic descent or Latino or Latina descent. And they were so interested in the project, they were asking, can you show me how to do this at home? So I just gave them all my tools and said, please continue to do this at home. And I've run into a couple of those students, and they're just like, that has really helped me. I'm not an art therapist, I'm not like a licensed art therapist, but I have worked in that capacity. To be honest, I don't even have a college degree. No one ever believes me when I say this, because if you know what you're talking about, no one cares if you have a degree. And I'm not saying that the educational system isn't important, but I think that self-education and to push yourself is infinitely more important than a piece of paper that says that you are valid because you went to such and such school. That is necessary for some fields like medicine. Of course, you want your doctor to be a licensed, doctor, but in art, I don't think it's that important, So that's how this came about. And I actually received a fellowship for this project that I did at I can't think of the name of the organization right now, but they gave me a fellowship, and I curated this program with a very famous musician in Chicago, a performance artist, and we did this program that was very, very well received. And I continue to do these drawings to this day. Now, the triptych, that piece was purchased by the Field Museum. It was my first museum acquisition in 2021. And they were just so excited about it, and I was very excited that they wanted to purchase my work, because it wasn't work that I normally did. I'm primarily a painter and mixed media artist, but I am multidisciplinary, so I do sculpture, photography, everything. And they were collecting works for what they called their
I think it was
COVID collection.
The pandemic collection, yes.
Yes.
The pandemic collection.
So there were lots of things going on during 2020, particularly in America with the The man who was killed by the police, and it was a worldwide thing. Yeah. George Floyd. Thank you very much for the prompt. Yes, George Floyd was killed. Breonna Taylor was killed. Someone just broke into her home, and it was the wrong home, and they killed her. So all of these things. So the work that I did with that triptych was really outside of my normal sphere of work, in that it was collage base primarily, and that it was dark and it was political. I normally steered clear of political work, dark work. I want people to be happy when they see my art, and that definitely was not the vibe of that work. It was more anger, it was more disappointment, it was more sadness, and it was definitely apropos for the time. I don't know if I'll ever do any more work like that, but it served its purpose, and the museum saw value in that because it was historic in nature. And I think the piece before with the sort of Jesus figures, and the more white Jesus figure in the forefront, and then there's a black Jesus in the background looking like, what is going on here? And, I was raised to think that Jesus had to be a brown person, and this is by a white German Jesuit priest. He painted people in my community as figures from the Bible. And he always said that he agreed with that theory, but who knows? We weren't there. I don't want to sound racist because I'm not. I love all people until they teach me that they don't love me. And then it's another story. But I have a biracial child whose father is Swedish American, and I have a bicultural child whose father is Jamaican. So, as a child, I remember telling my grandmother who raised me, I'm going to grow up and marry a man from every place in the world, and I'm going to have a baby by each of them so that my children will know it's okay to love everyone. And she looked at me and she says, baby, you can't do that. They have a name for women who do that. So I did it a little, yes. And I was married to both men.
That's fantastic, because it tells the story of the global village and how interconnected we all are, and what happens in China, in a market in China can then viral particles can mutate, and then out of that a pandemic could occur and then change the perception of the world everywhere. And your pieces of art, which I think are really beautiful as well, are just so amazing. So and I think I actually was also told, I have ears here at IMIP in different places, so I was also told that something happened to you in one of these days, and you became very emotional, and I would like to bring that back, because it perhaps has to do with ancestry. I think that's the word you've used. And here at the Dialogues, we discuss ancestry in terms of genetics and all the fact that some tests can be not appropriate for different races, because people, if you don't include people of a variety of backgrounds and races, you may get flawed results. And but now, I think we are dealing with something more spiritual, if I can say.
Yes.
Can I just show the video? And this nice...
Oh my goodness, you guys. Is this from Sarah?
No. This is from,
angry.
I think, from really concentrated.
So the lady, they
You're
actually...
a little bit dancing as well.
Yeah, I do. I dance when I work. Yeah. The lady thought that I was... she thought I was Brazilian, and she came to me and when I said no Portuguese, I said Americana, and they both looked really shocked, and she reached out to hug me, and that was just, I don't know, it touched my soul, because I could see myself in this lady, And we hugged for a while, and we even hugged again later, you know, but I don't know. I felt something very deep in that moment, and I couldn't help it. I started crying. She looked so happy. And one of the things that I have experienced while I've been here is, you know, walking around, people staring at me like, and sometimes staring with this look of contempt, like, what are you doing here? You know, and I recognize that look from America, you know, when Black people are in white spaces. And it was confirmed by a few people. I won't name anyone, but they're like, you didn't imagine this. I noticed there are no Black professionals, no dark professional people in the hospital. Maybe domestic people, workers, but no professional people. So for me to walk through the hospital looking like a professional with white doctors, I think it was very shocking to a lot of people to see that. And this lady and her son, I think they were really excited to see me in this space doing something that they felt was so cool and that I looked like them. And I felt that, and it just made me cry. And I'm almost about to cry now because, you know, we experience this a lot in America.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this, because we, in Brazil, it's very good that you say that and you felt that. You felt that with your heart and soul, as you say, because we tend to think or pretend to say that we are not a racist country.
I know, I hear this all the time.
And so thank you so much, because it should open eyes and in the ears of people to understand that unless we identify, unless we recognize that this is a problem, then we can't really fight against it. So
absolutely,
it's well, thanks again for sharing that with us, and perhaps.
There was even a worker here. She said she's considered caramel or caramello or something like that. I'm like, yeah, we have all of those distinctions within the Black American community. You know, we have coffee and cream, café con leche, you know, caramelo. And in the 50s, like 40s, 50s, even Black people within themselves were, what do they call it? Interracism. So they would take a brown paper bag and put it to people. And if you were darker than that bag, you were considered, you know, not worthy of being a part of anything. So the upper class Black society was lighter than a brown paper bag. So yeah, and I see that here. Yeah. And I'm not criticizing anyone or trying to make anyone feel bad, you know, it's just a reality. And if you don't face that reality, there are going to be a class of people who will always feel inferior.
Well, thank you so much, because all we are talking about has a lot of influence in the health status of people. And I'm not talking about, you know, only the biological, I'm talking about health in a much broader sense, in terms of you know, not only absence of disease, but also well-being and being and feeling well with, you know, being a society, in a community, and so it's really important what you have just shared.
There's a strong connection between mental health and physical health. If you're not strong or feeling healthy mentally, then your physical health is going to be affected by that. So diseases are caused, I believe, by mental health, you know, bad mental health, as opposed to good mental health.
Well, for sure, and perhaps I should, you know, come to the conclusion of our conversation, and I would like to raise, perhaps, from what you've just said, perhaps some of the best experiences we had in Brazil with art as therapy. And I'm aware you're not an art therapist, but as you said, you know very much a lot about it, including in your own healing process, as you shared with us. So thanks again. But we had pioneers like people like Nisi da Silveira. She was a pioneer in terms of all the the big revolution that occurred in Brazil, and in what we call a reforma sanitária, so the change and the profound change in terms of mental health treatment from the place where people were kept all the way to, going back home and going back to the communities and the society. And I think her work with art and mental illness was, has a profound effect in Brazil till now. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm sure that you can relate to that, can't you?
Of course. And I am very adamant about speaking about these subjects and speaking about mental health. Many times my own daughter, she's like, Mom, please stop telling people you have ADD or, this depression thing. And I'm like, why? It's not something I cause within myself. It's not something that I can control. Why shouldn't I talk about it? I think it needs to be normalized so that no one feels that, they're inferior in any way, No,
thank you so much. That's another of your great message today. So perhaps if you want, to give if you want to come to a conclusion and give you a final message, these episodes are seen by students and young professionals, people who from different areas of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So which would be Makeba's message to these people in terms of how can they contribute to better global health or a better world?
I would say learn color theory across artistic and racial lines, and be very cognizant of how you connect colorism with your patients, what you said earlier about Black women not receiving anesthesia, that happens a lot, and a lot of Black women die giving birth to children because of disparities in the health community. I guess to see people as people before color. I don't ever want to make anyone feel bad because you're only the product of what you were taught as a child, as we have the KKK in the United States. And, these people are indoctrinated from birth, and how can you blame someone for what they were taught as a child? The only thing you can do is try to teach them something different if they're open to receiving it, and to teach it with love and respect, So I think that's a really important message, love and respect, and not to not see color, but to accept all colors, It's like people think that, I don't see color. You see the color, everyone sees color, but to deny that you see it is almost as bad as saying, I'm not racist when you are. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Makeba, and thank you for your audience. Obrigado pela audiência a todos. E chega ao fim o episódio especial com a artista de Chicago, Makeba, que nos presenteou com sua presença e a troca de suas emoções, da sua arte e das suas ideias. E se você gostou desse episódio, se você curtiu esse episódio, acesse o nosso site e fique por dentro de mais materiais gratuitos, além de cursos que farão toda a diferença na sua vida profissional. Então não deixe de se inscrever na nossa newsletter lá no site, e se você está ouvindo nas plataformas digitais, a versão em vídeo está disponível no YouTube. Não deixe de se inscrever no canal e seguir as nossas redes sociais e interagir bastante conosco. Obrigado pela audiência e até o próximo episódio. Tchau, tchau!